Good morning, everyone. So, like I promised a couple of weeks ago when I finished reading the last book, we're going to start a new book today. This book is called Strangers in the Land, and this book it starts off in France during the time of the Reformation. There'll be a couple of strange words in here, but as we go along, hopefully I can explain a bit better what they are. But I'm going to start with one word now called Huguenots. Now, the Huguenots was the French term for Protestants, which is a type of Christian group. So, Chapter 1 of Strangers in the Land. This book is probably going to keep us going for a couple months, okay? So, Chapter 1, Strangers in the Land, Midnight Meeting. The peal of church bells shattered the noonday stillness of La Rochelle, a seaport town in France. Townspeople listened with astonishment. Some frowned and looked frightened, others smiled and nodded their heads in satisfaction. In the bakery shop, the baker shook his head and crossed himself before he put the swelling loaves in the ovens to bake. Next door, the cobbler sat open-mouthed, his hammer raised over the upturned shoe of his last. Across the town square, the tax collector straightened up from his account books, chuckled and rubbed his palms together. In a stone building not far away from the Huguenot, remember that word? Another word for Protestant. Huguenot pastor turned pale and dropped to his knees in prayer. The bells kept pealing. At the port where a ship had just arrived, the longshoremen stopped their unloading to listen. Surprise and alarm showed on their faces. Inside a walled garden outside, on the outskirts of La Rochelle, Pierre Laburn and his 7-year-old brother Henry heard the bells and stopped building their mud fort. Their mother, Madame Laburn, ran from their house and clasped Henry to her. Frightened by her strained look, Pierre whispered, "Is there danger?" His mother silenced him with pursed lips. "Mother," Pierre's little brother asked, "why are the bells ringing at this time of day?" A tear rolled down Madame Lebrun's face. Henry, with a puzzled look, brushed it off with his forefinger. "Mother, don't cry. What is there to cry about? I haven't been naughty, have I?" No, of course not, my darling." Madame Lebrun took a deep breath. Little Henry stared at her. Why do the bells keep ringing? "I'm not exactly sure." His mother's tone pierced Pierre with a nameless dread. What could the bells mean? Before he could ask more, a tiny, wiry woman darted out of the house, wringing her hands. "Oh, madame, I spilled the salt sack into the flour. Now they're both ruined. Oh, those bells, that's what did it. Something dreadful is going to happen. I just know it." Mother would have to explain now, Pierre thought, but she remained calm. "Now, Othalie, don't excite yourself like this, and don't throw out anything. The salt tax is very high this year. We'll just use the flour and salt together for cooking." "I'll send Pierre to the baker's for bread." She smiled a little. "Or perhaps you'd rather go?" Othalie brushed. "Madame mustn't tease me. I have too much to do in the house. Besides, he's coming to see me tonight." She fled with a flutter of her long skirts. Mother gave Pierre some coins. "1 loaf will be enough, Pierre, and if there's any news about anything, listen closely." And here, I don't know if you can see it too well, but there's a picture, and the picture is Mother giving Pierre some coins, telling him to only buy 1 loaf. Pierre ran almost all the way to the town square. At the baker's shop he found the door locked. Perplexed, he cupped his hands and peered through the window. The counters inside were bare. He knocked on the door several times, but no one came. Pierre remembered a side door that led to the huge brick ovens. As he approached, the door opened a crack. The plump baker, Alec Calvet, looked out. A finger to his lips, he motioned Pierre inside. Trays of fresh bread stood on wooden work tables. The massive oven, still hot from the baking, set out waves of warm air. The delicious fragrance of loaves made Pierre's mouth water. "Mother wants a loaf of bread," Pierre said. "Is there some reason why your shop is closed up, Alec?" For answer, the baker thrust a long crusty loaf of bread into Pierre's hands. You haven't heard? He frowned a little. Well then, I'll let your parents tell you. It's a long story. All about you Huguenots. Remember that word? Does it have something to do with the church bells ringing? Alec Calvert sighed. Yes, it does. Now run along. Don't let anyone see you if you can help it. He opened the door and looked out over the square. It's all right. No one's out there now. I guess everyone went home as soon as the news got round. What news? The baker pushed him out gently. Ask your parents. The bolt shot home behind Pierre. The town square looked larger than it had ever before. Even in the October sunlight, the shadows from the overhanging apartments on the side street loomed dark and menacing, filled with a strange fear. Pierre ran home, not daring to look back. Out of breath, he arrived at the garden gate and pulled a bell rope 3 times. The Lebrun family's private signal. Othalie let him in. Any news? Pierre shook his head. What could he say? He hadn't found out anything yet. Then he heard his father's voice. Is father home from port already? He asked. Othalie nodded. But he never comes home this early, Pierre said. He ran to find his father, but there was no sign of him or his mother either. Pierre stood perplexed. In the hallway, from behind the closed bedroom door, he heard the subdued voices of his parents. Pierre was more puzzled than ever. His parents never shut out the family before. A thump from the front room reminded him that Henry was hiding somewhere, ready for a game of hide and seek with his father. Pierre waited a few minutes, hoping father and mother would come out and explain what was happening. But the bedroom door remained closed. Pierre called out to his younger brother from the hallway. Henry, come out. There won't be any hide and seek today. At first he could see no movement anywhere in the room. Then the top of the carved window seat moved a fraction of an inch. The tip of Henry's nose appeared. Pierre's uneasiness welled up into violent anger. Henry, don't ever hide in there again. It's dangerous. Don't you know you could suffocate? Stepping out, Henry ran his finger through a hole in the panel. There's no lock. Air can go through that hole. How could I suffocate? It's dangerous, I tell you. Pierre sounded cross. Where's father? Henry asked, looking past Pierre. He's talking to mother. Let's go see what Othello is cooking for supper. In the kitchen, the boys watched Othello cube vegetables and put them in an iron kettle suspended in the fireplace. Pierre's uneasiness never left him, but somehow he could not bring himself to question Othello about the church bells. Later, Othello set the table for supper. Where's Madame tonight? She stopped, as if startled by the change of routine. And Monsieur, supper is ready. Will you call them, Pierre? I will dip up the soup. Pierre tiptoed down the hall. He could not have explained why, except that the strange feeling enveloped him again. He called to his parents in a voice little more than a whisper. To his relief, they came out at once and went to the supper table. Pierre looked forward to the usual laughter and happy talk after Grace, but tonight Grace itself was different. Father didn't even use the same words. Almighty God, our Father and Divine Protector, may this food replenish our strength that we may serve thee, as thine soldiers defend thy name against the enemies who now surround us. His voice rang with passionate intensity as he went on. May we strike down evil with thy sword of truth. May we put on the armor of righteousness. He stopped with a suddenness that made Pierre look up. Mother had laid her hand on her father's arm. Amen, father said. Not another word was spoken during the meal. Even Henry kept quiet. Afterward, Othello scurried through the household chores. But this, Pierre reminded himself, was unusual. Othello entertained the baker, her husband-to-be, twice a week, and she always hurried on visiting nights. But tonight was different. Alec Calvert had hardly come into the house when Mother took him and Othello aside, speaking in a low voice. Oh, Madame Lebrun, you don't say so, Othello said. I would have had the house already. Alec, you will have to go. I will take half the night to clean up. I'll see you tomorrow, she urged the big man out. Now, she said, I better go into the front room. Oh, if Madame had only told me. Her actions puzzled Pierre. She got down on her hands and knees with scrubbing brush and bucket and polished the already clean hearthstone. The blaze from the fire and her exhaustions brought a flush to her face. But Othello, you scrubbed that this morning. Pierre did not dare ask outright why she was cleaning the house at night. Neither would he admit his fear for the change taking place. Something sinister lurked in every corner. "Go away, Pierre, there's a good boy." Othello rubbed her cheek. Henry's bedtime came and went. Othello did not come to get him ready. She kept running from front room to kitchen, dusting the spotless chairs, the huge spinning wheel, the carved wood window seat. "Why is she doing that for?" Henry asked. Pierre didn't know, but he wasn't going to admit his ignorance in front of his brother. "Oh," he said in an airy voice, "we're going to have visitors." As soon as he said it, he knew it was true. But what visitors, and why? The bell to the garden gate jingled. "Maybe it's Grandpa." Henry jumped up in excitement. The bell rang out 3 times, evenly spaced. "That's our ring, not Grandpa's. Somebody is coming. We'd better go upstairs, Henry." When Othello opened the front door, Pierre heard a man's voice murmuring. Strain as he would from the landing, he could not make out the word. "Who is it, Pierre?" Henry asked. "I can't tell. Come on, Henry, let's go to bed." "Are you going to bed when I do?" Henry appeared enchanted with the idea, and undressed without protest. He dropped off to sleep with startling suddenness, and Pierre was left staring up at the darkness, trying to make sense of the happenings downstairs. He heard the garden bell again, 3 long peals. The visitors spoke no louder than the one before. After a time the same thing happened again. 5 minutes the bell rang out, but at such long intervals Pierre was sure it must be almost morning. He drowsed in a half sleep, but when the bell rang for the 6th time, he sat up wide awake. He had to know what was going on. He wrapped himself in bedclothes and tiptoed to the carved chest standing in the upper hall, the one father kept locked at all times and would never open. Pierre perched cross-legged on top. From where he sat he could almost see into the living room, except for the man-high spinning wheel that stood in the way. As it was, he saw men's legs passing and repassing. Wherever the guests were, they could not sit still. There was a hush. A man began to pray. Pierre recognized the voice of Pastor Foundry, the Huguenot preacher. With a feeling of relief, Pierre bowed his head. He liked the pastor, a calm, gentle man with quiet humor. Pierre could not make out the words of the prayer, but he lifted his head when he heard the Amen. A bubble of voices reached his ears, and then a man's voice rang out. "Is it rumor or is it fact?" This time Pierre recognized the voice of Dr. Maurice, the Huguenot physician who had been forbidden to practice medicine because of his religion. "My brethren," Pastor Foundry said in a firm voice, "we must face the truth. The church bells we heard today rang the death knell of religious freedom in France." Pierre puzzled over the meaning of Pastor Foundry's words. Everyone knew that Huguenots could not hold public office. What did the pastor mean? They couldn't meet together any more to read the Bible and sing hymns? "It can't be true," Father said in an excited voice. "The Edict of Nantes is perpetual." "Brother Lebrun," Pastor Foundry said, "we all know that the edict has been interpreted according to the letter, not the spirit, especially in the last 4 years. Why do we have to have burials at night, for example? Because the edict did not specifically state that we were to bury our dead in the daytime. No, brethren, the letter of the law has killed the spirit. We have seen the signs of the coming conflict for a long time." Dr. Maurice's voice rang out. Why must we Huguenots always fight our own countrymen? Why are we treated as if we were strangers in the land? Now, as you know, since I can no longer practice medicine, I have turned to compiling our history. I suggest that we do so. Many of our brethren have done. A silence followed. Pierre held his breath so as not to miss the doctor's next words. But it was Pastor Foundry who spoke. "When they prosecute you in the city, you flee into another," he quoted. "Do you mean we should emigrate?" "Yes," Dr. Maurice said in a tremor in his cultivated voice. "There's England hardly a stone's throw from us, or Switzerland, but I have another country in mind. In fact, I have written to a friend in the colony of Boston, Massachusetts, asking about conditions there in America." "America?" The word echoed from person to person. Pierre heard a gasp from a lower hall. Someone downstairs was listening. "Oh, madame, how dares he speak of America? People are all slaves there, treated worse than cattle. It's worse than the West Indies, a living death, they say." Mother spoke in a sharp whisper. "The West Indies, yes, everyone knows about that. But who told you this nonsense about America? You know that Monsieur has 2 fishing vessels going to Newfoundland all the time, and they do not bring back reports like that. Alec Calvert told me, Madame. He says things have changed so much in the last 5 years, there's no telling what will happen after today. And, Madame, yes, Alec wants me to marry him right away, before something might prevent it. Why, Othello, you didn't tell me that. No, I just couldn't, Madame. There'll be problems, Alec being a Catholic. Othello, we've discussed all that before. Yes, but things are different now. Listen, Othello. Pastor Foundry is talking. The pastor's clipped voice rang out with new depth. I ask that we meet here tonight. You have known me many years. You know I am not excitable by nature, but I want you to know that I am now gathering food and guns. The talk became so excited that Pierre was afraid Henry would wake up. Pierre huddled on the chest, dazed and frightened by the pastor's words. And I would like to know from each of you what arms you have at home, for we surely will have to defend ourselves sooner or later. I can tell you in just a moment. Father started up the stairs. Pierre sprung from the chest and fled to his room. He hid behind the door and listened to his father unlocking the chest. He heard the rattle of metal on metal. Beyond a question, the chest held guns. In that moment, Pierre knew what the church bells meant. It meant war against the Huguenots. And that is the end of the chapter. So, next weekend we will read chapter 2, called A Promise Not to Keep. Now, if you have any questions about what happened in the story, it'd be best if you asked your parents what some of it meant, and they will be able to explain the history of the Reformation. Alright guys, happy Sabbath, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye.